Next, we want to talk about the jobs report, which came out today. According to this report, the U.S. economy has added over 300,000 jobs in January. Unemployment rose overall from 3.9% to 4%. But breaking it down for whites and blacks, this is what we see. The white-only January unemployment rate was 3.3%, which was unchanged from December. The black-only unemployment rate was 6.8%, more than double that of whites, up from December's 6.6. And here to help us understand the report a little bit more deeply is Dr. Kristen Brody, an economist at Alabama A&M University. Welcome, Dr. Brody.
Good evening, Dr. Avis. How are you?
I'm doing great. So good to have you on the show. So great to see you. So could you?
It's good to be here.
Wonderful. So could you break down these numbers for us, not just in terms of this month and last month, but what have been the trends recently in terms of black unemployment under this administration?
Well, the unemployment rate did go up a bit. We saw that total non-farm payroll employment increased by 304,000, where it was thought that it was going to only increase by 165,000. And as you said, the black unemployment rate is higher, but those numbers can be broken down even further when we look at those numbers by age and race. So for whites, it was 3.5% versus 6.8% for African Americans. But when you look at men, white men is 3.3% versus black men, 7.1%. So that number is much higher.
Absolutely.
For white women, 3.2% versus 5.5% for African American. But the real discrepancy comes with both sexes between the ages of 16 to 19. So for whites, that number was 11.6 versus 20.6 for African American. So there are some real differences when you break down those demographics.
Absolutely. And just one other thing to follow up with that. So I'm looking at these numbers just from the last couple of months. You mentioned, for example, that black men unemployment is at 7.1% now. If you go back to November, it was at 5.8%. That's a pretty significant jump for just 2 months, isn't it?
It is. It definitely is. And part of that, if you look at December, was the government shutdown, that a lot of the people that were furloughed claimed temporary unemployment. So that's part of it. But it also goes to differences in education that we've seen since 2000, differences in incarceration rate, education levels, and just pure discrimination and bias.
Gotcha.
Those things definitely make a difference.
So economist to economist, Dr. Malveaux has a question for you.
So have you looked at the MPOPs? How are you? It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
The employment population ratios are what concern me more than the actual unemployment rates. The fact that there's a gap, especially among men, between the percentage of the population that's employed, the MPOP. So having looked at that, what can you say about that, and why should we be concerned about that as well?
Well, I think that when you just look at the unemployment numbers and whether they've gone up or down, it doesn't consider how many people have entered or left the workforce. Furthermore, how many people are temporarily employed, and also those who have left the workforce or are counted as discouraged workers. And in fact, the number of people who are employed part-time due to economic reasons has increased. And so a lot of African Americans are going to fall into that. But those numbers aren't counted in the pure unemployment rate.
Well, we end up with this gap, especially among men, that concerns me. For white men, you have an MPOP of something that's almost 70%. But for black men, as an example, you have an MPOP that is 62, 63, 64. Women, it's about the same. So the percentage of people who are unemployed is concerning, especially because they're not absorbed in the unemployment rate.
Could you go into a little bit more depth about MPOP so that the audience understands what you're referring to?
It's the employment population ratio. So it's the percentage of the population that is employed. And so that, to me, is a better number to gauge engagement in the labor market than the unemployment rate.
That's true, because the unemployment rate does not include people who have stopped looking for work, correct?
And the employment population ratio really says what percentage of the population is engaged in the labor market. And it's a really important number. And I know, my sister, because you are a labor economist also, that you've looked at some of this. You picked up the 16 to 19, which is really important. But I'm equally concerned with the prime aged gap in the employment population ratio.
Agree. I agree with you. That is definitely an issue. And I guess, again, when you look at the trends, increases in education have helped, but African Americans are still further behind whites in terms of educational attainment at the bachelor's level. We still deal with discrimination. We still deal with segregation. And furthermore, African Americans and Latinos are more likely to lose their jobs when bad things start happening. So all of those things contribute to those gaps.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Brody. It's been great having you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.